A Place Called Home by Laurie Wick, Chapter 6. Christine moved around the back of the train station. There were barrels and crates stacked against the building. A lone wagon was parked nearby. There was little activity with the darkness coming, but as she came around the corner of the building, she heard music playing. Looking across at what appeared to be a vacant lot, she decided to ask for help over there. The backs of the other buildings she passed were quiet, as the train station had been. They had an ominous look, and she walked slowly and squinted into the darkness as she moved closer to the music. As she arrived at the building, it occurred to her for the first time that it was probably a saloon. She hesitated before starting up the alley toward the street and front door. Hating the thought of entering a saloon, she nevertheless had to find a place to stay for the night and a meal. She would have to swallow her fear and ask inside. Halfway up the alley, a voice spoke out of the shadows. "Where you headed, boy?" Christine gasped and backed away until she came up against the side of the building. A man then came out of the shadows. He didn't look very tall, but his upper body seemed massive in the dim light of the alley. If there was going to be a fight, there was little doubt in Christine's mind who would win. "What's in your bag? A little cash, maybe?" His voice was deep and gravelly. "I've got me a thirst, boy, and no money. Maybe your bag there can help." Christine moved the bag in front of her and grasped the handle with both hands. "Now listen, boy, I don't want to hurt you. Just hand over the bag so I can see it." Christine felt like a trapped animal. Her eyes searched for an escape route, but he was too close. Her eyes came back to the man who was slowly approaching her. The injustice of it all began to weigh upon her. The last 24 hours were crowding in. She was tired and hungry, and her hat was too tight. Without the money in her bag, she couldn't even get home. Home! At this point, she could barely remember where that was. The man was almost within arm's reach when he stopped and held out his hand. "Just give me the bag, boy, and you can be on your way." "No!" Christine could hardly believe she had said that. Before she could draw another breath, the man moved. In an instant, he held a large knife toward her. Christine's breath lodged in her throat. "Now, boy, I'll say it one more time. Hand over the bag." Christine acted before she thought. Still clutching the bag with both hands, she brought it up hard under the man's extended arm. His arm went up, but he didn't lose the knife. Christine leaped away from him, but he was fast, and she just barely missed being stabbed. Her fear turned to anger and new strength. She swung her bag again, but he grabbed it with his free hand. She saw him raise the knife and stood in stunned horror, knowing she was about to die. She heard a long, high-pitched scream, never realizing it was her own. She felt the bag wrenched away as a searing pain shot through her chest. She felt her knees buckle. Blackness engulfed her, and she knew no more. Christine felt weary at having relived in her mind the events leading up to being in this room. Her weariness led to loneliness as she thought of how alone and how far from home she was. What was going to become of her now? Carrying a food tray, Maggie re-entered the room at that moment. She reminded Christine so much of Mrs. Hall that tears flooded her eyes. Maggie set the food tray down and turned to smile at Christine with such tender understanding that, try as she might, she could not stem the flow of tears beginning to pour down her cheeks. Without a word, Maggie sat down and gently embraced the crying young woman. Wrapped in the loving arms of Maggie, Christine gave way to the healing tears that were to signal a change in her life that she could never have imagined.